Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to start first and foremost by thanking the Rabbi Shalom for our magnificent Kehillah of Baltimore, who is so committed to Torah, who is so committed to Achdus, to unity, to togetherness, and who tries every single day in so many different ways to bring nachas to the Rabbi Shalom and create a Kehillah that is truly a point of pride in the Jewish world. I want to give a very special thank you for the Malachim, for the kings of this community, to the Rabbanim, and thank you for taking time on one of your busiest mornings to be here and give cover to the Torah and give cover to this event. It's a very big zechus to have you. And thank you for everything you do to encourage Torah, to encourage and inspire all of us to grow towards greater heights and greater accomplishments. Today's Siyum for the community is being done together with the All Daf initiative from the Orthodox Union, and I want to thank 3 different Harav Moshes from the Orthodox Union. First of all, our guest of honor, who we were zocheh to have for Shabbos, who will be speaking later, of Moshe Elefant, who is not only a Maggid Shir, whose shir is heard by thousands of people every day on Daf Yomi, but I understand was the inaugural Orthodox Union Daf Yomi shir. And we thank you for being here, for sharing a beautiful Shabbos, and for all your teaching of Torah. I want to thank our Moshe Schwed, who is hiding over there, but is the director of the Daf Yomi initiative for Orthodox Union. Thank you for being here and for everything you do to further be Marbitz Torah and Klal Yisrael. And in absentia, to Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who some of you know, the executive vice president of the Orthodox Union, who wanted very much to be here, but is in Eretz Yisrael and couldn't join us from there. Thank you collectively for everything you do for Talmud Torah. I want to thank our many sponsors who made this morning possible, who are listed outside on the sign you can see. A special thank you to our corporate sponsor, to Gabi Cohn and Apex, and to the many, many people who helped put this morning together. First and foremost, to Rabbi CJ Elefant, who worked day and night for a month to make this possible. Thank you. Thank you, Yashar Kayach. I want to share the quick program of events. I'm going to finish in a moment. We will hear some Divrei Bracha from Rabbi Marwick, Divrei Torah from Rabbi Gross, followed by the Siyum Maseches Yevamos, followed by some dancing in the space in the back, after which Rabbi Elefant will deliver the keynote address. When you make a Siyum on Daf Yomi on Yevamos, there's one thought that immediately comes to mind, and I'm sorry I'm going first, so I apologize if I stole it from everybody else. But of Meir Shapira, who founded the Daf Yomi, had a vart he used to say based on a daf towards the very end of Maseches Yevamos about Rabbi Akiva, who found himself capsized in the ocean, and he said, how did I make it to shore? Daf shel sfina nizdamnali, a daf, a plank of the ship, presented itself to me, and I hung on and I paddled with this plank until the waves brought me all the way to safe harbor. And if Meir Shapira would say, our safe harbor, our boat that takes us through the Galayam, through the destructive, dangerous waves of the ocean, he said this in the 1930s, I believe, or the 20s, is our daf yomi, our pages of Gemara is what we hold on to carry us through. And since he said those words, Klal Yisrael has seen incredibly threatening, incredibly dangerous Galei Hayam, many, many, many waves of the ocean that we couldn't even have imagined until this day. But Hashem in His Chesed has presented us with many, many Dapei Sfina, not just the Daf Yomi and its explosion across the world, but all the various forms of Dapei Sfina, all the various forms of learning Torah, and yeshivas, and shiurim, and chavrusas, and bati medrash that have proliferated across the world in our generation. And we have to, I think, express our special akar satov to Hashem for sending us all those planks of all those sfinos, all those boats and dapim for us to hold on to. And may our continued commitment and simcha and tenacious dedication to the Torah help to carry us through until the ultimate geula will bring us finally to safe harbor. It's a great cover to ask for Binyomin Marwick to share Divrei Bracha.
Good morning, everyone. I want to begin by thanking Rabbi Rose and the leadership of B'nai Jacob Shari Zion for hosting this beautiful program, this beautiful expression of Kavod HaTorah this morning. I want to thank Rabbi Moshe Elefant, Rabbi Pinchos who will be speaking this morning. And I want to thank all the Chashuva Rabbanim who are here sharing in this beautiful simcha. Thank you to the OU and all DAF who are spearheading this program and who are responsible for a huge amount of in-depth Torah learning on an international scale. Thank you. And thank you to the organizers of the program, CJ Elefant, who put his heart and soul into the program this morning. To all the sponsors, may you all be zoche to bracha and hatzlacha. And thank you all for being here this morning. Mazel tov to the Mesaimim. The commitment, the consistency that is Daf Yomi is a true fulfillment of Kfiyas Itim LaTorah. It's inspiring to behold, and even more so with a complex Masechta like Masechta Yevamos. Yasher Koach, may all the Lomdim go Mechayel Achayel. Rav Yaakov Mecklenburg, in the early 1800s, in his Sefer Haksava Kabbalah, is trying to understand the etymology of the word Yevama, Yibum. Where does it come from? And he decides that it comes from the word bama. A bama is a raised platform. It's a high place that was used to bring karbanos to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says, like a stage, Yibum is there to raise up another person. He says, first, it raises up, it lifts up a downtrodden widow by forcing, insisting that her Yava marries her. And even more so, it elevates the neshama of the niftar by establishing a family in his name. It's a mitzvah. Yibam is a mitzvah that exemplifies true Avas Yisrael, love for another person, chesed shel emes. And following the idea presented by Rav Tzadok in many places, that when you find Agadata and Shas, it's in a specific Masechta for a reason. It's no mystery that Yevamos has two of the most famous sugyas of mitzvos bein adam lachavero, the sugya of Rabbi Akiva, v'talmida of shalonagu kavod zeh bazeh, and the sugya that talks about the essential qualities of Klal Yisrael, rachmanim, baishanim, and gomlei chasadim, which means to put others first. The broad theme of Yevamos and the essence of Yiddishkeit. And that also explains why the Masechta ends with the famous Haggadah, which appears in three other places, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, and the famous vort from the Aruch LaNer and the Ksav Yad of the Gra, that each one represents a different type of Shalom, and that the Shalom of Yevamos is Shalom Bein Adam Lachavero. In this spirit, finishing a Masechta, which highlights Bein Adam Lachavero, it's beautiful. It's inspiring to celebrate a Siyum on this Masechta with Achdus, with Shalom, bringing together so many and reminding us that we're truly one Torah community. May we all be zocha that this Siyum on Masechta dedicated to Shalom Ben Adam Lachavero help bring the ultimate Shalom with the Binyomin Beis HaMikdash Bimher V'Yameinu. Amen.
Our marketing gurus decreed that every Rav who was named on our flyer was only allowed a single line title, and therefore Pinchos, our next speaker, was only identified as the Rav of Kilas Derech Chaim, but he is also the I don't know how to describe it exactly, the Mechaber. That he presents very well received, very well appreciated a shir, which is featured on the Aldaf platform, which is Parparos, Ladaf, fantastic, insightful ha'aras on the Daf Yomi, and so it's a tremendous cover to hear Divrei Torah on Daf Yomi from Rav Gross.
B'shus the Rabbanim HaChashuvim and Kol HaKal HaKadosh Hazeh. Thank you, Rabbi Rose, and thank you to Rabbi Marwick for the beautiful words. I was just thinking now, as Rabbi Marwick was speaking, I remembered, I don't know if the organizers had this in mind, but it's a somewhat of a hashkacha that we're both speaking here at this event, because me and Rabbi Marwick were actually Chavrusa second Seder back in Yeshiva, and we learned Yevamos together. And he mentioned two of the sugyas of Bein Adam L'Chavera and Yevamos. There was actually another sugya which he didn't mention, which me and him had an ongoing debate throughout the year. I think it's still going on, and that's the sugya of Darchei Noam. I think it's something that we've been working on together for many years already, and B'ez Hashem, the Darchei Noam L'chol Nisi V'seh Shalom should continue to increase. Paiskin b'chvayt achsanya, Chazal say, and I think this Siyum really has two achsanias. There's the achsanya of Shari Zion and the achsanya of Oldaf. Oldaf might not be a physical achsanya, but I think it's an achsanya nonetheless. Rabbi Rose already said over the one vart from Meir Shapiro, so we can't use that one, but I'll try a different one, another Yeduadik vart, a beautiful vart that he said over by the second Knessia Gedolah of Agudas Yisrael in 1929. This was in the middle of the first cycle of the Daf Yomi. Towards the end of the first cycle, it was introduced in the Knessia Gedolah in 1923. In 1929, as already it took off, people were learning it, and Meir Shapiro came to be madgish, to stress the idea that Daf Yomi, besides for the tremendous chizik and limud HaTorah that it brought about, it also brought about a tremendous chizik in achdus among Klal Yisrael. The whole Klal Yisrael, everyone is united, learning that same daf every day, brings a tremendous unity in Klal Yisrael. And he pointed out that it's not a coincidence, because if you think about it, the daf of Gemara, the blot of Gemara is the vehicle, it's the entity of achdus and of kibbutz golius. If you break down the daf Gemara, you have the Mishnah. The Mishnah is written in Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara is from Bavel. Rashi and Taisus are from France. The Rosh is from Germany. The Rambam, Pirush Mishnah, is from Egypt. The Marsha is from Poland. You might have the whole world. The ganze kibbutz golius in one blot Gemara, this one page, and it's therefore no surprise that it has the ability to be ma'ached all of Klal Yisrael together through the limud of Daf Yomi. And I think it's not an exaggeration to say that what Oldaf is doing is really continuing the legacy of Meir Shapiro, maybe taking it to the next step, to have a platform that's really ma'ached Yidden from all around the globe, all around the country, all around the world, to Magidi Shurim from all over the world, people listening from all over the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help that this chizek and limud HaTorah and achdus should continue to grow even greater, la'agdol Torah la'adira. The second achsania is Shari Zion, and I just want to mention on a personal level, it's very meaningful for me to be able to stand here and speak in Shari Zion. I want to read a letter that I got from the president of Shari Zion. So the letter goes like this. It says, "Dear Rabbi Pinchos Gross, on behalf of the congregation and myself, I want to express our sincere appreciation to you for the inspiring sermons which you delivered at our synagogue. It's a pleasure to have you daven with us, and more especially to know that we have such a learned and devoted gentleman such as you in our midst. With every good wish, very truly yours, signed by the president of Shari Zion." This is an actual letter, I'm not making it up. But as you probably figured out, this letter was not actually written to me. I think the word gentleman might have given it away. And it's actually written to, this is from June 26, 1972. And it's written to my grandfather, who I'm named after, Rabbi Pinchos Gross, who at the time he retired from the rabbinate in Pittsburgh. He moved to Baltimore. He lived here on Clark's Lane. And apparently there was a tkufa when the Rav at that time, Rabbi Tabak, was not around. And he was asked to deliver the sermons in his absence. And that is the reason for this letter. I found it recently, mamish within the last couple of weeks. I was going through my grandfather's old papers, and for that I say it's very meaningful to be able to stand here 50 years later in the same spot and speak here and continue the shukvus with Shari Zion. The letter it has Rabbi Israel Tabak is the rabbi, Rabbi Ari Neuberger is the educational director, and some other people if you want to see the actual letter. It was called Shari Zion at the time. And Al Kol Panim, it's meaningful to be here today. I just want to end off with a ha'ara. It's supposed to be some type of insight on the daf, something about the last line of the Gemara. The Gemara ends off with the line of Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Avma Blazer, Rabbi Chanina, Tamil Chacham, Marwick, Shalom Ba'olam, Shanam Rabbi Chol Banayich, Lemudi Hashem, Rav Shalom Banayich, Atini Banayich, Elabayinayich. And what this Gemara has to do with Yevamos is not so clear. As Rabbi Marwick mentioned, it appears 4 times in Shas. It's not so clear what it has to do with any one of these Mesaktis. And it's well known, as he mentioned, the Gra says a beautiful remnant. The 4 times it appears in Shas is at the end of Brachas, smells the Yevamos increases, which spells the word Banayich. Banayich, Chol Banayich, Lemudi Hashem, is what should tell us of these 4 Mesaktis. So what is the significance of these 4 Mesaktis? What does that have to do with Shalom? So the Gra explains that each one, as Rabbi mentioned, each one represents a different element of Shalom, different piece of Shalom. Brachas is Shalom in Adam L'Makar, Tefillah, Pirishma, Nazir, Shalom in Ishla Isha, Yavor Yayin, and other things that it's mechazik to Shalom Bayis. Yevamos is the Shalom ben Adam L'Chaveroi, and Krishis is Shalom ben Adam L'Atzma, between a person and himself, between the Guf and the Neshama. And when you learn these Mesaktis, it brings about these different elements of Shalom. Now, it's always bothered with the Kasha that he says it's 4 times in Shas, it's Ramas of Banayich. At the end of the day, it's not really true. There's a 5th time where this Gemara appears, and that's in the Mesachos Talmud, Daf Lamed Beis. The Gemara says, Talmud Chama Ma'am Shalom, B'Racham Shanam B'Chol Banayich Lemudi Hashem. So what happened to Talmud? Why is Talmud not part of this Rebbe? Why is it not part of the Banayich? And I think if you look at the Lashon of the Gra, it's brought down the Ksaviyad of the Gra, the Talmud of the Gra was made. So the Ksaviyad, I think the Gra really answers this question. The Gra says that there are 4 times in Shas where the Mesakta is Messiah with this Meimer. 4 times where it ends off with this Meimer. Talmud, it does appear in Talmud and Daf Lamed Beis, but it's not the end of the Mesakta. It's not in the middle. It's towards the end, but it's not the last line of the Mesakta. It's 4 times when it's the last line. So what's the significance of being the last line? It appears in the Mesakta. Why is that not good enough? And I think this gives us a little bit of insight into what a Siyum is really all about. Every block of Torah that someone learns is unbelievable. Every line you learn, every word of Torah is Kodesh Kadashim, and it builds Yevamos, like Pinchos says. But at the same time, when you finish a Masechta, total Masechta, you complete a Masechta, there's a certain kinyan, a certain shleimus, there's a certain kedusha, a certain ar that you get from completing a whole Masechta. And to get the shalom, to tap into that shalom, you have to finish the whole Masechta, and then you get that shalom on that Masechta. So Talmud has within it this Meimra, but it's in the middle, it's not at the end. When you finish the Masechta, it's a whole different entity, and it's a shalom and kedusha that you wouldn't have by just learning part of the Masechta. So I think it gives us a little bit of an insight into what this Siyum is all about. To be Messiah in the Masechta is not just about learning more and more block, but there's a kinyan, there's a kedusha that a person is able to gain from going through a whole Masechta from cover to cover, especially in Masechta like Yevamos, which is not from the easy ones. And we should all chaperayim and enjoy the simcha that we have here today, whether you're Messiah or you came here to show Kabbalah Torah, to really give out of the simcha for the whole community. And I just want to end off with just a machshava, pshat. What does it mean? Talmud Chacham Ma'am Shalom Ba'olam. Talmud Chacham increase shalom in the world. What's the pashut pshat? If you think about it, it does not seem to be what we would think. You look throughout Shas is full of machlekes. That's what it is. It's probably not one daf in all Shas doesn't have a machlekes. There's not one parak in all Shas that doesn't have a machlekes, except for one they say is a mekayman and another one. But Shas is full of machlekes, and that's what it's all about. And the Chachamim seem to argue more than anyone else. In what sense are they Marwick Shalom Ba'olam? And I was thinking perhaps the pshat could be like this: is a well-known medrash. The medrash gives us a little insight into what was happening in the Yevamos in the heavens before Adam was created. So there was a debate. There was a machlekes, first machlekes in the world before Adam even came here. The malachim were debating whether Adam should be created or not. So the medrash tells us that Chesed said that Adam should be created. Adam is malach hasadim, is full of chesed. He's always doing chesed. He's very kind. Emes said no, shouldn't create Adam. Adam is full of sharim, it's full of deceit and lies. It's not worth it. Tzedek said he should be created. People are kind. They do tzedakah. Shalom said Adam should not be created because his malach tates is full of fights. People always fighting, getting into arguments. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? It says HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Emes, Hishlach, he was mashed it down, he threw down Emes. Emes was out of the picture, and then he was able to create Adam. And the question all the person rather with is that he got rid of Emes, but what about Shalom? Shalom also had a title. Shalom said people are full of fights, full of friction. How can you create Adam? How did he achieve Shalom? And the Maral in the Siba Emes says a beautiful pshat. He says that when the Gemara tells him, Medrash says that he was mashloch Emes arti, threw down Emes. It doesn't mean he got rid of Emes. It doesn't mean he threw down Emes. But what it means is Emes is the ultimate Emes. Emes Kinei Al Timkar. Emes is the Torah Kadosh. That's the ultimate truth in the world. In Hishloch, when he's mashloch the Emes arti, that means he gave us the Torah. He brought down the Torah. He gave the Torah down to this world, Olam HaTachton. And once the Torah was given, says the Maral, Shalom no longer had any time, he had no problem, there's no issue of Ketata anymore. And I believe what the Maral means to say is like this, that what was Shalom bothered with? What was the problem? People are full of tatas, people are full of fighting and friction. Well, people have different opinions. It's natural, everyone has their opinion. I have my opinion, you have your opinion, and naturally, if two people have different opinions, it's difficult to get along, and it causes machlokes, it causes friction. I like this politician, you like that politician. You don't see eye to eye, causes machlokes. Sometimes you're lucky, you could get shalom, but shalom usually requires some type of surrendering of your opinion. I give in, you give in, but to have both people keep their opinions, have their opinions, and still be b'shalom is something very difficult to achieve. But the one exception to that is the Torah. Torah Shabbat specifically has an unbelievable thing which you don't find anywhere else in the whole world, where you can have two people having a machlokes, having a debate, arguing vehemently, and at the same time, they're both honest, they're both true. And Elu Be'elu, Givela Kim Kain. You have Beis Shammai saying, Tzaras Erva is mutter. They still say Tzaras Erva is awesome. And at the same time, they're both honest, they both are recognized, and not only are they both honest, but they both become tired. They both become part of Torah Shabbat. They both enhance Torah Shabbat. They enlarge Torah Shabbat, and they beautify Torah Shabbat. What Torah Shabbat is the different shittas, and they're both emes. So halacha you pass them like one, but in Torah you make the center of Torah on Beis Shammai, as they do in Beis Hillel. Within Torah, every opinion has a makom, has a place. There's no winner and loser. It's Elu Elu Divei Elokim Chaim. So it's an unbelievable thing that Torah is the only thing that could allow people to express their opinions, to be heard. It could be real, it could be emes, and two opposing views could be emes and could be reality at the same time. And that I think is the shot in what the Maral means when HaKadosh Baruch Hu threw down the Torah. It allowed Shalom to be appeased. Shalom had no tightness. He saw this thing called Torah. Now everyone with their different opinions, everyone could live together, they could come together in unity and have achdus by expressing their opinions within Torah, and it all becomes Torah. If you imagine you have a fight between two colors, color blue and the color red. We call a color war. And they're both fighting over a piece of paper. Each one wants to paint this paper. And they can't come to an agreement. And a chacham comes and he says, you know what, how about both of you come together and paint a painting together. And they both come together and they paint this beautiful painting. Not only are they both winners, but the painting is more beautiful than it was by just having one of them. And that's what Torah Shabbat is. The beauty of Torah Shabbat is a tapestry woven from different shittas, opposing views that come together and create the yofi of what Torah Shabbat is really all about. And that's the Talmud Chacham Marwick Shalom Ba'olam. The Shalom comes from the machlokes. It's true there's many machlokes, but the more machlokes you have, the more shalom there is, the more people can voice their opinion, be heard, be real, and two people on two different sides of whatever issue they're arguing about, both become emes, both become Elu Be'elu Divei Elokim Chaim. And I think it's part of the simcha of the Siyum. It's not just the Torah that was learned, but it was the shalom that was this Rabbi. Shalom was brought to the world by learning Torah, but to bring the shalom, it's not enough to learn superficially, not just to hear the shir, but a person has to learn with a milchama, learn with a war, learn with a fight. You have to engage the Gemara. You have to try to delve as deep as you can to understand the truth, to uncover the truth. And it's a war. It's a milchama between you and your chavrusa. It's a milchama between you and your magashir. It's a milchama between you and yourself. You know, when you get away with, I think I know the Gemara, I think I understand, I don't have to see the Rashi, and you put yourself to go deeper and really get what the Gemara means, that milchama, that's what brings about the shalom. And you're hearing a shir, and you think your Maggid Shir wants to have it easy, he doesn't want to ask questions, ask any Maggid Shir, and I'm sure that the biggest nachas that they have is when you ask questions, give them a hard time, and that's what brings about the emes of Torah, that's the mechamkesh of Torah, that's the fighting of Torah that is mekadosh the world, brings us together. It's something which it seems to be an oxymoron, but the more you fight within Torah in a covenant way, not just a way, the more shalom it brings, the more the Torah grows, and it really brings about the beauty of Torah Shema Peh. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us. We should to continue to learn Torah, to Mechanish Torah, to be Marwick Torah, to be Marwick Shalom, and Hagel Torah to help you.
Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Talmidei Chachamim, Na'avim Sholosh, Ba'olam. Talmid Chachamim increased peace in the world, Shneimar, Nechol Banayich, and Nedei Adonai, Shalom Banayich. And all your sons will be disciples of Hashem, and abundant will be the peace of your sons. Adonai Allah, Yishai Basra, Yisrael Allah, Asaf Hadwan Allah Maseches Yevamos, Hadwan Allah, Rasan Allah, Maseches Yevamos, Rasan Allah, Lord is Moshe Minah, Maseches Yevamos, Lord is Moshe Minah, Lord be Allah, Hadin, Lord be Allah, Yosef, Hadwan Allah, Maseches Yevamos, Hadwan Allah, Hadwan Allah Maseches Yevamos, Hadwan Allah, Lord is Moshe Minah, Maseches Yevamos, Lord is Moshe Anara, Yamar, Hadin, Lord, Yamar, Gadei. Hadwan Allah, Maseches Yevamos, Hadwan Allah, Hadwan Allah, Maseches Yevamos, Hadwan Allah. Lord is Moshe Minah, Maseches Yevamos, Lord is Moshe Minah, Lord, Yamar, Hadin, Lord, Yamar, Yosef. Yivasam Achanecha, Adonai Eloheinu, Avesenu, Shekei Shevasa, Imam Yishenu, B'olam Hazeh, Yisrael Imanu, Aliyah B'Papa, Rami B'Papa, Nachman B'Papa, Achoi B'Papa, Abba Mari B'Papa, Rachman B'Papa, Rachish B'Papa, Surcha B'Papa, Aga B'Papa, Ravi B'Papa. Adonai Eloheinu, Estivei Shavat Chafefinu, Kufiyas and Chol Israel, V'Yeh Kulanu, Anachnu, V'Sasayenu, 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 Chol Israel, Kulanu Yeshua Mechalam, V'Sasayenu, Lishma, V'Yevai T'Chakmeni, Mismusecha, Kili Elam Hili, Yidi B'Yisami, V'Kukecha L'Ma'ano, V'Rosh. Le'omach, Le'olam L'Oresh Shach, V'Kukecha, Tivam Chayisani, Baruch Adonai Lamdenu Kukacha, Amen, 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 Salavai. Kodima Nachula, Tefenach Adonai Eloheinu, V'Avesenu, Shesamta, Tokenu, B'Yoshem, Beisam Midrash Lo, Somata, Chokenu, Meyoyevei, Tavanos, Shanu Mashkimi, Yehe Mashkimi, Anu Mashkimi, Yivei Tzerah. Yehi mashkimei midvarim, tilmanu b'amilim v'neim amilim, anu amilim v'kablim sachar v'heim amilim v'einam v'kablim sachar, anu ratzim v'heim ratzim, anu ratzim chayil b'aba, v'heim ratzim yiveh shachar shenama v'ata Elohim. So we gain yiveh shachar sanshevam, Amin, Amir Ma'alai, Chasur, Yimehem, Vani, Atachah. Yivasam, Tamachar, Yal, Shushain, Shadati, and Sayin, Sakas, Yevamos, Spain, Tazarin, Haskil, Masakos, Israel, Feri, Yusayman, Yamim, Mishnah, Lasers, Italian, Escodaway, Kamusa, Saka, Yava, Yuskus, Kanatain, Kamari, Chasam Dechachami, Yano, Yuzari, Shalot, Sambus, Torah, Pizari, Zavazari, Olam. This is Kayen, the Salachacha, Tanka, Sa, the Shakacha, Tishma, Lacha, Laki Sosahi, the Sikhacha, Kiva Yabuda Mecha, Yosika Lacha, Shnoskayen, Orachel Bidamida, Bismillah, Shukra,
Yiskadavi, Yiskadash, Shemei Rabba, Yalmadi, Hu Asu, Des Kadasa, Lechaya Messiah, Lachta Yasvan, Lechaya Alma, Lemechnei Karta, Yerushalayim, Lishlach, ולשחלה ככלי בגבי ומקבל חנה נקרא מן ערה ולעשבה פלחנה דשמיא לאסרי וימליך קודשא בריחו מלכוסי ויקרא בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלו בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. ישמי רבם וברך לעולם ועמל מהיה יסברך וישתבח ויסבר וישרמם ויסנשא ויסהדר ויסהלם ויסהלו שמי קודשא בריחו לילה מן כל ברכסה ושירסה ותשבחסה ונחמסה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. על ישראל והרבנן ועל תלמידיהם ועל כל תלמידיהם ועל כל מאן דעסקין ברייסא דיברסי הדין ודי בכל עשר ועשר יהי להון לכל שלום הרבה חינה וחסדה ורחמין וחיינו ריחין ומזי ריחי ופרקנם מקדם ונשמעיה והרב אמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרב מן שמיים וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום ורחמה וברחמה ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Thank you, Rabbi Rose and Shara Zion for hosting. Special thank you to CJ Elefant for putting this all together single-handedly. I should say single-handedly. I know there are other people involved, but I don't know who they are. So thank you to all of them. He was certainly the lead individual putting together this event. Thank you to Hananya Kramer for coming and setting up his camera. Appreciate that. And all the other people that are here that came to participate in the Siyum. The Old App platform is dedicated in memory of Meir ben Chaim Wakmin. May the thousands of hours learnt weekly, daily actually, thousands are daily, be a Eloi for his neshama and a schos for his wonderful family. Previous Siyumim and this Siyum, Old App Siyum, have been dedicated by the Goldberg family in memory of Yitzchak Isaac ben Arav Eliezer. And I've said this in previous Yumim, this was somebody who, according to the doctors, was supposed to live till 5 years old. He was in and out of the hospital 250 times and lived until 47 years old. And I like to think of the lesson for us Daf Yomi learners who persevere day in, day out, get up early in the morning, late at night, on the run, on the go, traveling, always making sure to learn that Daf. It takes a level of perseverance, and that perseverance should be in Eloi for his neshama. I feel a special connection to the Baltimore community. I think the person I'm named after came off the boat probably before anybody here was born in 1913. His name was Moshe Pinchos Miller, and he arrived here. He was a Yelid Panovich, a Talmud of the Nitzivim Volozhin. He came here with 7 children in 1913. Unfortunately, 2 of them remained Shomer Shabbos. One was my great-grandfather. His name was Mr. Emmanuel Miller, Manny Miller. I was telling Rabbi Hapfer, I know he was a member of the Glen Avenue Shul before my times, way before my times. And another brother was Louis Miller. I don't know if he's still here, Rabbi Akakian is married to a granddaughter of his. My grandparents lived here for many, 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 many years. My mother grew up here. Mr. and Mrs. Shia Brisk. Could be many of you bought houses that had real estate contracts done by my, people are raising their hands. Yeah. Baruch Hashem, I've never heard anything bad said about her in her real estate negotiations. I think she was also the first Atala dispatcher. She had such tremendous kibbut av aim, but her mother lived in her house for her last years, and she would not leave her house. She missed, I would say, dozens of simchas in New York and Lakewood not to leave her mother, so she was always home. She said, I'll be the first Atala dispatcher. She had her apron, had that Atala radio, and that's where it all began. And speaking of Daf Yomi, I've met over the years Rabbi Weinreb. He says that he started the first Yiddish Daf Yomi shir in Baltimore. I don't know what happened in the 1920s or 30s, but certainly at that time, he was the only Yiddish Daf Yomi Magid shir, an American-born person giving a Daf Yomi shir to Holocaust survivors. He has many, many fascinating stories of that shir. Also want to thank Rabbi Pinchos Gross. So if you want to describe Pinchos Gross's daily shir, or he calls them paparois, insights on the daf, just think about the letter he read this morning. He pulled out 2 weeks ago a letter from his grandfather's treasure trove and related it to today's Siyum. Those are the types of insights he gives on every daf. He finds the most fascinating pieces of information, history, Torah, and puts it together in a concise 5-minute package. That's what you get daily. So thank you, Rabbi Gross. Before I introduce Rabbi Elefant, I wanted to mention, today is the B'chanan Wasserman's yahrzeit. And we were in England recently, and Diane Gelly said over a story from about Rabbi Chanan. Someone came to him once and said, I need advice on a business deal. He's about to get into serious business dealings, and he asked Rabbi Chanan for some advice. Rabbi Chanan says, hold on. And he goes to the side and starts opens the Gemara Bava Basra and starts learning. And he's learning and learning and learning. The person comes over to him and says, Rabbi, I didn't come to ask you Pshat and Sugya Bava Basra. I came to ask you for advice on a business deal. So Rabbi Chanan said in Yiddish that the way I'll be able to give you advice on a business deal is by learning Bava Basra. Give me a few more minutes. So when a person gets up early in the morning, goes to sleep late at night, his learning is learning for the sake of learning, for the Torah Lishma. But it gives you so much more. It gives you the ability to be able to do business and to have atzlacha in all aspects and all areas of life. I just saw a fascinating vart from Chassam Sofer where he says that a person davens every day, Ahavas Eilam Beis Yisrael Amcha Hafta, Torah Mitzvos, Chukim U'Mishpatim Eisanu Limadata. And then we continue, Al Kein Hashem Elokeinu, Shachveinu V'Kumeinu, Nasiach B'Chukecha, Chukim, the Nismach B'Divrei Seir Sacha V'Mitzvei Sacha Leilam V'Ed, Torah and Mitzvahs. And he explains, Al Pidrush, he says that we have a mitzvah, V'Asafta Degonecha. We're commanded to go out and bring parnasa in for our families. That's one of the chukim, he says, we find Lechem Chuki Atrifein, he's going on parnasa. Al Kain, he says, Hashem Elokeinu Nasiach B'Shachveinu V'Kumeinu Nasiach B'Chukecha. Every morning and every evening, we daven to Hashem. Nasiach Lashon V'Yetzi Yitzchak L'Suach Basad Tefillah, we daven to Hashem. Give us Hatzlacha B'Chukecha in our parnasa. But that's the Chayei Shah. But what do we want the simcha to be? The nismach b'divrei seir sacha v'mitzvei sacha le'olam v'ed. As we daven to Hashem to give us parnasa, I mean matzliach and parnasa, we want to have that the simcha should be a simcha of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and being able, together with supporting our families, to have the proper simcha in limud HaTorah. So it's my pleasure to call upon Rabbi Elefant, who besides running OU Kosher, COO of the largest kashrus organization, is busy morning, evenings, and doesn't have any vacation, but is dedicated to giving this Daf Yomi Shir all hours of the day. He spends time preparing to be able to give over the Daf, and as Rabbi Gelly mentioned, when we were in London, he said he has a new understanding. It could be some English taich and all daf. He says he sees now that everything that Rabbi Elefant does it's all daf. Everything comes from the limud HaTorah. Like we said, when a person wants to be matzliach and everything he does in life, it comes from the limud HaTorah. Chaved Rabbi Elefant.
Rabbi Schwed. I actually learned today again what I've learned many times: never be the last speaker. Because the good news is for you people is that half my speech has been taken. I've been here over Shabbos in Baltimore, and my impression of this community, my such positive impression of this community, continues to grow every moment. And this morning with the Siyum is the culmination to see an entire community come together. And as I was sitting next to Rav Heinemann Shlita, he was telling me how all the Rabbanim in this community who have large communities and large kehillas are all ba'achtas and all together l'man Hashem v'tarasai. So we were talking last week, some of you may know, we did Siyumim last week in England. Monday night we had a Siyum in London. Tuesday night we had a Siyum in Manchester. And we were speaking, do we have to have a third Siyum and schlep this weekend to Baltimore? But there is no community where, as we've heard so many times this morning, the lesson of Talmidei Chachomim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam is more evident and more manifested. So of course we have to be in Baltimore. Baltimore is the community that fulfills all the time this Maimer Chazal. So how can we not come visit Baltimore and live and learn this wonderful lesson? All the people who have been so involved, Rabbi Rose, and the community in building and the Daf Yomi and making the Siyum, so much appreciation. But if for a moment, if I may, I'd like to voice a hakaras hatov to my cousin, who I really didn't know till fairly recently, until he started listening to the Daf, CJ Elefant. And I want to share something. You would probably consider it quite personal, but it's important that everybody should hear it, because although it's about him and I, it really is about everyone. I had a grandmother who was CJ's great-grandmother. My grandparents, I had the schus to spend Shabbos by the Elefant family, and Friday night, because of me, he didn't get any sleep. We sat and schmoozed for many hours. And amongst the many stories that we spoke about was the story of how my father's family survived the war. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. That's not the time and place for it. But suffice it to say that they were hiding in the Carpathian Mountains for 7 months during the war. And they, Baruch Hashem, survived, my grandparents and 8 children. They came out and they came to America. My grandmother, obviously, all those weeks did not light Shabbos candles in the forest, in the open forest. And she accepted upon herself that for the rest of her life, she's going to light every Shabbos candles, an extra candle to make up for every week she missed lighting candles all those months during the war. If you came to my grandmother's house, she had a small apartment from when I knew her in Borough Park. She had a table. And that table every Friday afternoon was full of candles. She herself had 8 children. And all those weeks, I never really counted. I imagined there were 50 candles that she lit every Erev Shabbos. And she would stand there by those candles. This I very vividly remember. And she would stand by those candles Friday afternoon with tears, davening for her mishpacha, for her children, and her future descendants. And this Shabbos, I saw the meaning of those tefillos. When I saw the family of CJ Elefant, him, his wife, his children, Rabbi said, every tefillah HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears. There's no tefillah that isn't heard. And if you want proof that there is no tefillah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't listen to, look at CJ Elefant. His great-grandmother's tefillahs are here. We heard so much about the Maimer Chazal, Talmidei Chacham Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Rav Chaskel Abramsky, when he said Pshat in this Gemara, as we heard from Rabbi Gross, Talmidei Chachamim are not necessarily known for always being people who are Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Maybe Talmidei Chacham in Baltimore. But where I come from, it's not always the case. So what's Pshat in Chazal that they say Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam? And in general, what's the word Marbim? Marbim means that they multiply. What does that mean, that Talmidei Chachamim multiply Shalom Ba'olam? So Rav Chaskel Abramsky said that the Pshat is not because when they're sitting in the Beis Medrash and they're learning, and as we heard, there are always machlokes in Pshat in the Gemara. That's not necessarily what Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam means. Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam means that when you look at a Talmid Chacham and you look at the way a Talmid Chacham behaves and you look at the way a Talmid Chacham lives, you want to emulate that lifestyle. You want to live that type of a life. And that's Pshat Talmidei Chachomim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. They increase Shalom in the world because they are the people that we all want to copy. I recently saw in the Chashuk Echem, those who listen to the Shia know I like to repeat the Torah from Yitzchak Zilberstein Shlita. He asked the question. He says, in Israel, the houses are apartment houses, co-ops. And there was a person, there's a Vad Bayis, there's a committee, and the person who was running that Vad Bayis in a house didn't get along with the other people. And one of the neighbors in the house is a big Talmud Chacham, and they asked him to be the one to take care of Vad Bayis from now on. And they approached him and he said, I'm so busy, I'm learning, I have shiurim, sedarim. Why should I give up from my learning? So they asked the Shaila, and he said, of course you should take it on, even if it means losing time from learning. Because we're certain the way you're going to administer this Vad Bayis will cause that there should be no machlokes. Because when we watch the way the Talmidei Chachamim live together all of the time, that is the biggest ribui shalom in the world. And what are we here for, if not for that purpose? And frankly, every day we daven Shachris, and before we say Birchas HaTorah, we speak about the Malachim. Kulam Ahuvim, Kulam Berurim. First of all, anybody ever try to understand what does Kulam Ahuvim and Kulam Berurim mean? And second of all, what does it have to do with us? We're davening. We're saying Birchas Krishma. So why are we describing Malachim? So Rabbeinu Yoina says that Kulam Ahuvim means that all the Malachim in Shemayim are Ahuvim. They love each other. You know why they love each other? Because Kulam Berurim. What is the definition of the word Berurim? Berurim means clear. Everybody knows that this is my job, and everybody knows that this is my role, and therefore what you do, and what I do, and we're not jealous, and we all get along perfectly well. Before we say Krishma, before we say Shmona Esrei, we announce that we want to emulate those malachim. And how are we to emulate those malachim? We say we learned the lesson of the malachim. They are kulam ahuvim, they are kulam berurim, and we're going to live life that way. And if we're going to live life that way, then we could say Krishma, and then we could daven, and know how tefillas will be answered. And it's interesting. The Rambam in Hilchos Beis Bechira says that when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, he made a chamber, because he knew that there's going to be, unfortunately, a day when the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. And he made a chamber for two things that he wanted to remain there forever. He wanted that should remain there the Aron, HaKodesh, and the Mata Shel Aaron, the stick of Aaron that we read about in last week's parasha, that after the Machlokes with Kairach, it sprouted Shkedim, Prochim, and it was the way the Machlokes and Klal Yisrael ended. And the Mefarshim asked, they put away room for the Mata Shel Aaron, and what about the Mata of Moshe Rabbeinu? The Mata of Moshe Rabbeinu, which he did all the Makkos with, which he did all the Nisim with, which he did Kriyas Yamsuf with. That's not something we need to put away for posterity. We have to put away the Mata Shel Aaron. And the Farshim say, what is unique about the Aron and what is unique about the Mata Shel Aaron? They both represent Shalom. As we just learned, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom, the Aron. And the Mata Shel Aaron is what brought Shalom amongst Klal Yisrael. Shlomo HaMelech knew that Klal Yisrael is going to have a churban. Shlomo HaMelech knew that Klal Yisrael is going to face difficult times in their history. But Shlomo HaMelech was teaching us a lesson. That if we want to be able to survive those difficult times, we always have to remember that we have to have shalom amongst ourselves. And whatever happens, we always need the Aron HaKodesh and the Mata Shel Aaron. And actually, particularly those of us, I shouldn't say those of us, because probably all of us, who are the Lomdei Daf Yomi. This week's parasha, the Torah tells us that what did Bilam say about Klal Yisrael? Hein am kalavi yishkoin. Klal Yisrael is a nation that gets up. What do they get up for in the morning? To learn. They get up in the morning to daven. Whatever else is going to happen. The Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin, Masechta Brochus, says that the pasuk says regarding Bilam, V'yodeya das Elyon. What does it mean that V'yodeya das Elyon? Bilam knew exactly the moment when a HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets angry for a split second, for a fraction of a second every day. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu did a chesed that all of those days that Bilam was attempting to curse us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't, Ma'ezoim loizoam Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't get angry. Frek Taisvis. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu only gets angry for 1 second, for one fraction of a second, what could have Bilam said in that small amount of time that could hurt us? So one Teretz Taisvis says, he could have just said the word Kali. But the second Teretz Taisvis says, is that how much can you say in that split second? But if you start saying a klolo in that split second, then it continues for the rest, and it'll still be a klolo. My Rabbi say, if by a klolo you begin with a klolo, it could continue. How much so by a bracha? How much so if a person devotes a couple of minutes, hopefully more than a couple of minutes, every day to learn? What does that inspire? And what does that cause? That those few minutes that we're all so busy with everything we do, but we have a couple of moments a day to learn. Taisvis, Bilam are teaching us, if you take those few minutes and you learn Torah for those few minutes, it's not just those few minutes that you're learning Torah. It inspires us for the entire day. It inspires us for our entire lives, that we have a different life. My Rabbi say, I've been saying a shir in Daf Yomi, this is my 5th cycle. I've met many people who are learning the Daf Yomi, whether in my shir that I give live, whether the shurim that we have in all Daf, and other many Magidi shurim. I have never met a person, without exception, who learns the Daf that it didn't change his life, that it didn't change his family, it didn't have an influence on his children. Those couple of moments you learn, whether it's in the morning or it's in the evening, whatever your schedule is, aren't just those couple of moments. They inspire and influence your entire life and your family's entire life and your community's entire lives. The Gemara says there are 2 times HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets angry. When he gets up in the morning and he sees the Malchei Mizrach Amarav getting up and bowing down to the sun. And the other time the Gemara says Hashem gets angry is when he comes to shul in the morning and he doesn't see a minyan. What does the Gemara mean to teach us? The Gemara means to teach us when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees the Malchei Mizrach Amarav get up in the morning, and it doesn't have to be kings, and they bow down to the sun and the moon, and they're declaring that this world is all that counts, and we're going to spend more time on pursuing this world. And he comes to shul, and he doesn't see people saying we're going to pursue the Limud HaTorah, and we're not going to pursue davening. That's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets angry. And Bilam taught us that we have to be a Hein Am Kalavi. We have to get up in the morning or late at night and learn and inspire. And that's the difference. Rashi says that how did the Goyim get Bilam? So Rashi says the Goyim came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a complaint. Why do Klal Yisrael have Moshe Rabbeinu? We have nobody. So he gave him Bilam. So the question is so obvious. Bilam and Moshe Rabbeinu are equals? The answer is Bilam and Moshe Rabbeinu, how can we even think are equals? But they both started with the same Torah. The difference between Bilam and Moshe Rabbeinu is that Bilam studied Torah like it's a subject. Another subject in the library. Another subject that you study in school. And Moshe Rabbeinu studied Torah that the Torah affected his life. It influenced his life. It changed his life. They once saw a brilliant individual do a terrible Aveira. And they asked him, you're such a brilliant person. How do you do such a big Aveira? He says, when I do Aveiros, I'm not that brilliant. But a Talmid Chacham is a Talmid Chacham 24/7. We end every Masechta, as we heard earlier, with the words Hadron Aloch. And so many pshatim have been said regarding the words Hadron Aloch. The word hadron is hador, beautiful. We proclaim as we finish a Masechta, and certainly as we finish Masechta like Masechta Yevamos, such a hard Masechta and took so much perseverance to learn every day. Hadron Allah, by learning the Masechta, we become more beautiful. And we thank you, Hashem, for giving us the opportunity to become more beautiful. And we mention the B'nai Rapapa, as we heard a few moments ago, and we say, who here doesn't want to have children, Talmidei Chachamim, Yirei Shemayim, Baalei Midas? And we say, who is the example of having 10 wonderful sons? Rapapa. Why did Rapapa have such sons? Because Rapapa learned all the time. There isn't a Masechta, there isn't probably a parak in Shas that doesn't have Rapapa. If we want to have our B'nai Rapapa, if we want to have those kind of children, we have to bring the Hadron Alach. We have to bring the beauty of Torah into our lives. The Pasuk says, Hanistoros Lashem Elokeinu. We're supposed to be low-key. Hanistoros Lashem Elokeinu. Hashem should know what we're doing. But v'haniglois, we should do mitzvahs publicly. Our families, our wives, our children, our neighbors, our friends should see us going to a shir every day, should see us devoted to learning. You know what will be the schar? You know what will be the result of living a life of haniglois? Lanu, if we're going to live our life that way, ulivanenu. We, and there isn't a person in this room, and there isn't a person in Klal Yisrael who isn't constantly davening for Zara Chayev Kayoma, Bonim u'bnei bonim, oiskim b'Torah b'mitzvahs. And the pasuk gives us you don't have to go to any fancy professor, you don't have to go to any fancy lecture. The pasuk gives us the eitzah. Haniglois, sit down and learn. Let your children see that you're learning Torah. You will be zoicha, lanu u'levanenu. Ma'aver Rabbi the Gemara says, Chazal teach us, how does Olam Haba look? Tzadikim yoshvim v'atariseyim b'roshehem. Tzadikim yoshvim, the tzadikim sit in Gan Eden, they sit in Olam Haba, v'atariseyim, their crowns b'roshehem are on their heads. Why does it have to say b'roshehem, that their crowns are on their head? Where else would you put a crown? Ma'aver Rabbi, you know how you will be zoicha, how we all will be zoicha. Tatre Sehem, that we should be zoicha to those wonderful crowns of Olam Haba, to those wonderful crowns of Gan Eden, B'Rosheim, if we think with our heads. If we think about the future. If we think about how we want our families to look. If we think about how we want our community to look. Tatre Sehem, B'Rosheim, think about that. Tomorrow morning, when it's going to be hard to get up, because you went to sleep late tonight, or because whatever reason, or you had a tough day by business. And you'll say, we'll miss one day. Think about Rosh Hashanah. Think about what that means. Think about if your son saw you come home last night late for whatever reason, and he still sees you getting up early in the morning to go to a shir. Think about if you come home from a hard day's work, and instead of relaxing, you go out to a shir. That's the Rosh Hashanah. That's the thinking about what our actions cause. And if we live our lives with that goal, that we live our lives to want to do what's right, and to want to inspire others to do what's right, we will be zoicha, to hadron, to have a beautiful life, begashmius u'beruchnius. We will be zoicha to b'nei Rapapa. We will be zoicha to have children like Rapapa. We will be zoicha to sit in Gan Eden with Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mehera b'yameinu.
Thank you, Rabbi Elefant. Thank you to everyone. We'll have